All right, in the last video, we made it so that we could actually get our clients from Firestore and put them into our clients component. And you can see they're coming in through the state here in the Firestore state. So what we're going to do now is make it so that we can add a client. So we need to create our add client component. We need to render the form, and we need to handle the submit, handle the interaction with Firebase, and so on. So let's go to VS Code and let's create, so in clients, we're going to create a new file called add client.js. And inside here, this is going to be a class-based component, so I'll do RCC tab. And of course, we're going to export default down here, add client. And for now, I'm just going to put an H1 in here and say add client, just so I can make sure we get the route straightened out. Okay, so now we have a component that should render. So let's go to our app.js and let's bring this in. So we'll go ahead and I'll just copy this down, and we will bring in add client. It's going to be from component/client/add client, and then we need to create a route for it. So we're going to, let's copy this route down, and then exact path, it should be /client/add, and the component that we want to load is obviously add client. Okay, so let's save that and let's make sure that works. Now the button that we have over here already goes to client/add, so you can see that that now works. So let's take care of the rendering of the form. So we're going to go back to add client. I'm going to close up this spinner in clients.js. We don't need that. In here, so let's get rid of this H1, and I'm going to put a row here, and then I'm going to put a 6-column div. And in here, I basically just want like a back button, like back to dashboard. So we're actually going to use link, so I need to import that. So we want to import link from, you guessed it, React Router DOM. And we'll put that in here. So let's say link. And we want a to attribute, which is going to just go to /, which is the dashboard. Let's give this a class name. So class name for this, btn, and let's do btn-link, which will just format it as a link, so it won't look like a button. Okay, and then in here, we're going to say back to dashboard, or not dashboards, dashboard, and then I'm also going to put an icon here. So let's say I class, we'll do FAS, and let's do FA-arrow-circle-left. Okay, and let's save that. Let's take a quick look, and there we go, back to dashboard. So a little bit of navigation. Now underneath this row, okay, so this is basically just like kind of like the heading. Underneath this row right here, we want to put a card. Okay, so I'm going to put a bootstrap card class. We're going to have a header, so a class of card-header, and let's say add client. Okay, and then we're going to have a card body class. And inside the card body is where we're going to put our form. And our form doesn't need an action. We'll add an event later. And in the form, we'll have some form groups. So let's say div class name form group. And then inside here, we'll have a label. And let's do HTML4 equals, because remember, we can't have a for attribute in JSX. It has to be HTML4. And this is going to be for the first name. And we're going to say first name. So that's the label. Then we'll have an input. So this input will have a class of form control. Okay, just a simple, just a bootstrap class. And it's actually going to have a bunch of attributes. So I'm going to put these on different lines. Okay, so let's do that. So we have type, class name. We also want name equals first name. And let's see, we're gonna do all of our validation. We're just gonna use HTML5 for validation. So we're gonna say min length equals 2, and we're gonna let the default validation take care of that as well as the required. Okay. Now, when you work with forms in React, and we've already looked at this stuff. I know sometimes I'm explaining things twice, things I've already explained, but just in case people are just watching the project and didn't watch the rest of the course, we need to put each input as a piece of state. Okay, so let's go up here and let's add the state for this component. So we can just say state equals, and we're going to have a first name, which will be nothing by default. We're going to have a last name. We're going to have an email. We're going to have a phone. And we're going to have a balance. Okay, that's our state. And then for each input, we're going to have an onChange event. So an onChange event handler that's going to equal a method called onChange. So this dot onChange, like that. And then as far as the value for this, it's going to be whatever that state value is. So if we say value equals, and we can say this dot state dot, and then what is this? This is first name. So this dot state dot first name. Okay. Now, for the onChange, we're just going to do what we've done in the past. We're going to create onChange and make sure it's an arrow because I'm not binding this. So we want to go like that, and then pass in an event parameter here, and then we just want to do this dot set state, and we want to set our state, and we're going to use e.target.name as the key, and then the value will be whatever they type in, so that will be e.target.value. Okay, simple onChange. Actually, we don't even need these curly braces. We can just do that since it's an arrow function. Okay, so that should be it for this first input. The second one is going to be very similar, so we're going to copy the entire form group. Let's copy the form group, go right under it, and paste that in, and let's change what we need. So we'll change this to last name. Last name, and we'll change this and this. Okay, so the state will be the last name, and we'll do min length 2 required for this as well. That's fine. Next one is going to be email. So I'm going to paste in the form group again, and let's change this to email. Let's change this, email. And the type, we definitely want to change to email so that it uses the validation, so it has to be an email address. State. Okay, we should be good there. Min length, we don't need that since it has to be an email address. And yeah, so that's good. We don't even need the required, actually. Okay, so the next thing is going to be the phone number. So let's go under this form group. Let's paste in a new one, and let's change this to phone. Let's change this right here. Phone, the name, phone. The min length, I'm actually going to put 10. And then we want to change the state, obviously, to phone, this dot state dot phone. So required, we'll leave that, and that looks good. And then for balance, let's paste that in. So this here is going to be balance. And let's take that, and let's go Control D to select the name here as well. And then another Control D so we can change all of these at the same time. and we'll say balance for all of those. Okay. As far as validation, I'm not going to do required here or min length. We're actually going to have a setting where we can make it so that we can disable this balance field on the add form, and also a setting where we can disable it on the edit form, because you can actually edit the balance from the details page. So we'll make this optional, but we'll get into that later on. All right, so those are all the fields. Now under the form group here, we're going to have our input button. So let's say input with the type of submit. Let's see, value will be submit, and let's just add a couple classes. So we'll do btn primary, and let's do btn block. Okay, so that's our submit. So let's take a look. Let's save and check out our form. So there we go. So we have first name, last name, email, phone, and balance. So now what we need to do is handle the submission. Okay, so the submission is going to update Firebase, or Firestore, I should say. So we need to use connect and Firestore connect, just like we did in the clients.js. So I can actually copy. I'm going to copy the prop types, compose, connect, Firestore connect. We don't need the spinner because we're not actually loading anything to begin with. So let's just grab this stuff here and put that in add client up at the top. Okay, and then let's see what we want to do here. Let's go down to the bottom, and we actually don't need connect just yet. The only reason we need connect is because we're going to be using settings, and we're going to be using we're going to get some state from the settings reducer, but we don't actually need compose or connect just yet. So I'm actually going to comment those out for now, because all we need to do, we're not getting anything back from Firestore, so we can just say export default Firestore connect like that. And then, of course, our add client, the name of our component. Okay, we can do that for now because we're not getting anything from the state and putting it into props. So we don't have to do like this junk here, where we actually got something and then got it from the state and then put it into a property. We're not doing any of that. All we're doing is connecting to Firestore so that we can upload a client or add a client. All right, so let's go up to our form tag, our opening form tag, and let's add a submit. So we'll do on submit equals this dot on submit. Okay, and we're going to create that. Let's see, let's put this, we'll just put this right here. We'll say on submit, make sure it's an arrow. So it's going to take in an event parameter, and since it's a form, we want to e.prevent default. Okay, we want to prevent the default from submitting, and we have to prepare our client to add to Firestore. Okay, now the client is going to be in the state. So when we update any input, it's going to update that particular value of the state. So I'm going to just create a variable called new client and set it to this dot state, because that's what the state for this component is. It's the client. It's all the fields. In fact, if I save this and go back and we go to the React Dev Tools and I just select, let's see, we want the add client component so that we can see the state, which you can see here. If I start adding data, you can see it updates the state. Okay, so that's what we're going to want to send over to Firestore. Now, since we did this at the bottom, we used Firestore Connect, we now have this.props.firestore available to us, which has a bunch of methods with it, including the add method to actually add to Firestore. Now, as you guys have seen, I like to use destructuring, so I don't want to say this dot props dot Firestore. I want to take out Firestore from the props. So I want to use curly braces here and say Firestore and take that out of this dot props like that. And then we can do Firestore dot add. Okay, now Firestore dot add is going to take in an object with the collection. Okay, we need to specify the collection we want to add to, which is going to be clients. We only have one, but we need to specify it anyway. Second parameter is going to be the actual client we want to add, which is in new client. Okay, it's the state. Now, one thing that I want to do beforehand is handle the balance, because if we leave the balance blank, it's going to just be an empty string, and if that happens, it's going to be shown as not a number in the front end, in the client table. So what we want to do is, if it's an empty value, we just want to turn it. We want to make it a 0 is what we want to do. So let's say if no balance, make 0. So that's really easy to do. We can simply say if new client dot balance is equal to an empty string, then we simply want to set new client dot balance equal to 0. Okay, and then once we do this add here, we can actually get a promise back from this. So we can say dot then, and inside here we're just going to put an empty set of parentheses, use an arrow, and then I just want to redirect. So I'm going to say this dot push, this dot props dot history dot push. Okay, so that's how we can redirect, and we want to redirect to just slash. Okay, and we could even do this, since history is part of props, we could just take it out here. We could say history, and then instead of this dot props, we can just say history dot push, but it's fine either way. All right, so I think that's all we have to do to be able to add. So let's save it. Prop types, so it's giving us this warning because we didn't use prop types, so let's go ahead and do that. We already imported it, so down here at the bottom, let's set these pain in the ass things. So add client dot prop types equals, and we have Firestore as a prop type. Okay, so Firestore prop types dot, and it is an object and is required. Okay, let's try it. So just refresh the page for good luck, and let's see, let's add a client. So let's say Tom Williams, I guess, I don't know, and email tom@gmail.com. Did I use Williams already for Karen? I think, oh no, I didn't. So tom@gmail, phone number, balance, we'll say 20, let's do 25, and submit. Okay, so it got added. Now let's see what's going on over here. The behavior for date objects. Now I remember why. Remember in the store we had that that Firestore that wasn't being used. So if we go to store.js, where is it? This right here, I commented it out. This was the reason why. So basically the behavior for date objects stored in Firebase is going to change and your app may break. So to hide this warning and ensure your app does not break, you need to add the following code to your store. So this right here, const firestore equals firebase.firestore. That's what we commented out. But we also want to add this right here, this line, these two lines. So I'm going to grab that, and let's see, is it just that? Yeah, it should be good. All right, let's go back to store.js, just to get rid of this error here, let's uncomment that and let's paste this in below it, and we can just get rid of this comment right here. So we're just setting this timestamps in snapshots to true. So let's save that, and now that error should go away. Okay, we can try to add a new client, and let's do, we'll say Tammy Waters, Tammy at Gmail, phone, and let's do 0 as a actually let's leave balance empty and see if it works, if it gets added as 0. So submit, and there we go. So Tammy Waters has a 0 balance, and we didn't get that timestamp error. All right, so we are moving along. We can read clients from Firebase. We can add them. So let's see. In the next video, let's start on our let's start on our details. So we want to be able to click details and see all the information about the client. We'll also have a link to edit and delete them. We'll be able to update the balance right from the details page. So we'll have a little bit of UI interactivity. All right, so I will see you guys in the next video.